Good afternoon, geometers. This is Ms. Backfish, and I am here to talk to you about circle equations, equations of circles. We've done a lot with circles, but we probably haven't thought a lot about them having equations. And the first part we're going to talk about is the standard form equation for a circle. And here's how that looks. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared, and I really should say quantity squared, meaning the whole thing is squared, equals, which probably means absolutely nothing to you until you know what some of this stuff stands for. The h and the k is the center of the circle, the point that's at the center of the circle. So the h would be the x coordinate of that point and the k would be the y coordinate. R, as you might guess, stands for radius. So it's very important to notice here that when we are looking at the equation of a circle, we are looking not at r, we're looking at r squared. If we're not in the equation, if we're just talking about the radius, then we're just talking about r. But if it's in the equation, while it's in the equation, or if we're trying to put it in the equation uses r squared, not r. This because we're not used to thinking of circles as having equations. So let's jump over to Desmos. And I'm going to write an equation in here exactly in the same format. X, let's say 3, and that's going to be squared. And then we say plus y minus 1 squared. Oh, squared. And then equals 4. Okay, now you can't see it. Let me make it so that you can. There it is. There's my circle. Okay, and this format of the equation fits exactly what I just had written on my paper. And I'll just make it a little bigger here, where the format there was x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. So that's the same idea. So what is my h here? H is 3. So let's look over here. 1, 2, 3. And y is, k is 1. So if I go to 1, 2, 3 to the right and up 1, I am at the center of this circle. So that hk is the center of my circle. What about the radius? Well, remember the equation doesn't show me the radius, it shows me the radius squared. So if it's showing me 4, that means the radius squared is 4. If the radius squared is 4, then the radius must be 2. Remember, here was the center at 3, 1, 1, 2, and I get to the edge. 1, 2. Why am I counting by 2s? Look at these boxes. 2 boxes is basically 1 unit. So 2 to the left gets me to the edge of the circle, 2 up gets me to the edge of the circle. So this circle does have a radius of 2 and a center of 3, 1. So there it is again, our standard form equation of the circle. This is what we end up using with circles in one of 2 ways. We're either trying to get here most of the time, or we're trying to pull things out of here most of the time. So those are our 2 things where most of the time that we're dealing with circles, we're either hoping to get things into this format, or we're looking at this format and pulling information out of it. So let's look at a few of the things we might be asked to do. There are a lot of different ways of asking us stuff about equations of circles, but here are some of the most common. They'll give me the circle equation in standard form. So that's that standard form we just said looks like this. So they give me that, and they'll ask me to find the center or the radius, which if I know how to find the radius, I can find the diameter, or to graph it. That's one thing I might be asked to do if I am given the circle equation in standard form. Now, if I'm not given the standard form equation that looks like this, I'm usually being asked for it. In other words, they're telling me, please write me a circle equation in standard form. And they might ask me to get there from different information. In other words, they might give me the center and the radius. That's the easiest. The center and the diameter. There are several different ways they might give me information and ask me to use it to write the circle equation in standard form. Just wanted to show you this partly to point out A lot of times getting ready to do circle equations, we talk about completing the square. This is where you would need to complete the square. Okay, so this is where that would come in handy, is when you are given a circle equation, but it's not in standard form and you have to put it in standard form. Well, why is that? Because look at what standard form looks like. You have a binomial squared and another binomial squared. So if they don't give it to me in that form, I'm going to have to figure out what I need to do to get it there. Okay, so let's go back to that standard form, and there are two things I want you to make sure not to trip over, two things that can be kind of tricky when dealing with this form of the equation. One of them I already pointed out. Make sure you realize that whatever you're seeing in the equation is not radius, it's the radius squared. The other one is this. If my center is HK, then look at what's in the equation there. I've got a minus in front of H and a minus in front of K. What that does is it basically means that what I'm seeing in terms of the number sign is the opposite from the actual center. Here's what I mean. Let's say that I have this. We'll just ignore the radius for right now. Okay, if the center is H and K and H comes behind the minus, then H is 2 and K is 1. So if I see minuses, then my center has nothing but pluses, positives. Now, what if I see pluses? What if it said x plus 3 squared or y plus 5 squared? Well, if I'm thinking of it in this format here with minuses, then this is the same as if it said x minus negative 3 and y minus negative 5, because that's what makes a plus out of a negative, is two of them minus a negative. Okay, so basically if you see a plus, that means your H is actually negative and your K is actually negative if it has a plus in front of it. So the easiest way to think of it is, because of these two minuses, your center has the opposite sign of what you see. If I see plus 3 in here, my center is at negative 3, plus 5, negative 5. All right, so you got to change the signs compared to what you see in the equation because of those minuses. Okay, so let's do some example problems. Let's look at this number 3 here. If I see pluses here, that's really like saying that my H and K were negatives and the minus and negative turned to plus. So in other words, my H and K here is negative 4 and negative 3. And this marker is unfortunately dying. All right, so what about the radius? Well, this, remember, is r squared. So if r squared is 1, well, it's handy with 1. The square root of 1 is still just 1. So here is my center. Here is my radius. And I'm 2 for 2 on bad pens. Let me see about going to black. It's a little bit boring, but that's okay. So if I'm asked to graph this, here's the center. So I'm going to go to negative 4, negative 3, and there's my center. If the radius is 1, the easy way to do that on a grid is to go 1 to the left and make a little dot, 1 up from the center, 1 to the right from the center, 1 down from the center, and then draw a circle that goes through those 4 points. Can be kind of hard. Sometimes it's not that circular looking, but do your best. All right, let's look at number 4 over here. I don't have any parentheses here, so what does that mean? Well, what it means is this is the same as x minus 0 squared. If you don't see any parentheses, that means that the x coordinate or the y coordinate, whichever one you're looking at, is just 0. So here my h and k, h is 0. K is positive 3, opposite sign from what I see here. So 0, 3 is right here, and there is the center of my circle. What about the radius? Well, this is r squared, remember? So if r squared is 9, I could take the square root of both sides, and r is 3. Generally, when we take the square root, we do the plus or minus thing. I don't have to do that here because I'm not going to have a negative radius. So I'm really just looking for positive roots. So I'm going to go 3 to the right from my center, 3 down from my center, 3 to the left from my center, and 3 up, and try to make a circle that goes through those 4 points. And like I said, it's not always the easiest. But that was not the worst I've ever done. Okay, so let's try another one. Why don't you go ahead and hit pause on this one and decide for yourself what the center is and what the radius is for this circle equation in standard form. Okay, so this is my x minus h. So again, opposite sign. If it was really a minus, that means minus a negative. Had to make that plus. So the h is negative 3. The k is positive 4. Opposite sign from what we see inside of there. Then we know that this is r squared. R squared is 4, so that means r must be 2. So I'm going to go put the center of this circle at negative 3, 4. So that's left 3 and up 4. And then I'm going to go 2 in every direction from that dot to draw my circle. 2 to the right, 2 to the top, 2 to the left, 2 down. And those are 4 points I can try and make my circle go through. Not the best circle. And there it is. All right, let's try this one right next to this. Number 5. Go ahead and hit pause and see if you can identify the circle, the center and the radius of this circle. Okay, the center, HK, H is 3. What about K? This is the same as y minus 0. If you just have y, that means you're not subtracting anything. So that's just like if it said y minus 0 squared. So 0 for K. So there's my center. The radius squared is 1, which means the radius is just 1, because square root of 1 is just 1. So I'm going to go to 1, 2, 3, 0, and here's the center of my circle. I'm going to go up 1, down 1, left 1, right 1, and those are 4 points that I'm going to draw my circle through. And there it is. Okay, let's do a couple more examples. X squared plus y squared. What's that mean? Well, that's the same as if I had x minus nothing squared plus y minus nothing squared. So remember, if you don't see parentheses, that means the x or y coordinate there is 0 for your center. Okay, so HK here, my center, is at 0, 0. That's the H and the K. My radius squared is 25. That means if I take the square root of both sides, I get that my radius here is 5. So my center is at the origin, 0, 0, and I have a radius of 5, so I'll go up and down and left and right 5 and make marks and try to hit those marks when I draw my circle. Not too bad. Not perfect, but not too bad. All right. Go ahead and try this one. Find the center, find the radius. Let me actually move it up and you could try 7, 9, and 10 here if you like. Hit pause if you want to try those yourself. Okay, 7. The H is going to be negative 4 and the K is going to be positive 4. So my center is at negative 4, positive 4. My radius squared is at 4, which means my radius is at 2. So negative 4, positive 4, there's my center. And I'm going to go up, down, left, and right 2. And that's how big my circle is. number 9. This is like x minus a -2. In other words, -2 for the h value and +2 for the y and for the k value, excuse me. That's h and k, that's my center. Again, if the radius squared is 4, then the radius is 2. So this is a lot like the last problem. The only difference is where the center is. All right, over here on number 10, with both of these being minus, my h and my k are both going to be plus, positive. So 3, 1 is my center. And we keep having this radius squared is 4. We have a theme going on, radius is 2. So 3, 1 right here. And there's my circle. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to transition. And what we just did was we talked about here's the circle was given to us in standard form. What did we need to find? We found the center, we found the radius. We actually didn't find the diameter on any of those, but how would we? Well, if my radius is 2, my diameter is 2 times 2. If my radius is 5, my diameter is 2 times 5. It's always twice as big, remember. Okay, so we can find all of that. Now the next thing is we're going to write a circle equation in standard form. And we're not going to do all of these in this one video. We're definitely not going to talk about completing the square until a separate video. But right now I just want to hit these 3. Center and radius, center and diameter, and graph. These are really the simplest ways to go in terms of the simplest ways to write my circle equation in terms of what they could give me for my starting info. So let's go ahead and look at a few of those. All right, here's a worksheet I have printed out that starts with some of these things. It says use the information provided to write the equation of each circle. Okay, if I know the center and the radius, well, keep in mind that's the whole idea behind the standard equation is that it shows me the center and the radius. Those are the very 2 things that we need to write the standard equation form of a circle. Now, let me just point out to you, when you are writing any kind of equation of anything, in your final answer, you're going to have x and y still there as x and y, okay? We want an equation that lots of different points can plug into. So if I'm trying to write the standard form equation of a circle, this ends up being a number, this ends up being a number, this ends up being a number, but I still want to see x as the letter x and y as the letter y in my final answer. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so center and radius are exactly what I need. The center is the h and the k, and the radius is the r. Now remember, when we put it in the equation, we want r squared. Okay, so this is what we're plugging into. So x minus -3 is going to make x plus 3. Remember that whatever it's the sign that you have, the sign you see basically in the equation is the opposite of the sign of the x coordinate or y coordinate of your center. And y minus 0, we don't have to put in parentheses because y minus 0 is just y. So I'm just going to leave it like this. If r is 9, we're not going to see 9 in the equation because in the equation we see r squared. So if r is 9, r squared is 81. So that's what we would see in the equation, and that is my answer. Let's look at number 14. Here's my h, here's my k. Both of them are negative. That means I'm not going to see any minuses because remember it changes. X plus 13, y plus 3, and then I get my radius squared over here. If the radius is 3, the radius squared is 9. So there is my standard equation with that info. Don't forget the squared. Sometimes people just aren't paying attention and leave off the squared. Don't leave the squared off. It's very important. Okay, so go ahead and then pause and try numbers 15 and 16 if you want to. And we will go on now. These are both positive, so I'm going to see minuses. So x minus 13, y minus 9, and what is 4 squared? This is the radius. In the equation, it's always radius squared. So it's 4 squared, which is 16. Don't ever just write 4 squared and leave it. Go ahead and multiply out 4 times 4 and get 16. Same thing over here. That's my answer here. This is going to tell me I'm going to put x minus 13 and y plus 5. X minus 13, y plus 5 equals 4 squared. 4 squared is 4 times 4 is 16. Now, I don't actually have any examples on this paper of problems where we are given the center and the diameter. Okay, but I said we were going to mention that. All right. So what if I'm given the center and diameter? How does that change things? Well, it's pretty simple. So let's do an example or two of that. Okay, let's suppose that I'm given a center of 0, -5. So there's my h, there's my k. And the diameter is 10. Well, I don't need the diameter in the equation. I need the radius, and I need to be able to square it. So if the diameter is 10, I just have to divide that by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my radius is 5, and now it's just like the problems we just did. If the radius is 5, then r squared is 5 squared, which is 25. So I'm going to write x minus 0. X minus h becomes x minus 0 squared. X minus 0 squared, I don't have to write parentheses for minus 0 because x minus nothing is just x. So I'll write squared. And then this negative is going to look like positive in the equation because it's y minus a negative, or y plus 5. And equals r squared. There's my r squared. We just talked about that. So it's really the same idea. We just have to start by taking half of the diameter to get the radius. Let me give you one more to practice that's like that. Let's say the center is at, why not go with 0, 0? And the diameter is 18. Write the equation for that circle. A circle with a center of 0, 0 and a diameter of 18. Hit pause if you need to, because I'm about to go on. So this is x minus 0 squared. X minus 0 squared just becomes x squared. Plus y minus 0 squared just becomes y squared. Now if the diameter is 18, that means the radius is half of that is 9. That means the radius squared is 9 squared, which is 81. And there's my equation. And we didn't circle this one, so let me go back and circle this one. Okay, the last one I said we were going to hit just right now is writing the equation given the graph. Okay, now if I'm given the graph, remember the two things I need to write the equation are the center and the radius. So if I'm given a graph, then that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the center and the radius. A couple of different ways we can find the center, which we want to find first. One is just by counting, finding a horizontal line and looking where it looks like it's in the middle, like halfway across, finding a grid line that's halfway across the circle like a diameter, and counting all the way across there. So like these look like the endpoints of a diameter. If I count from here to there, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units across. If the diameter is 8, that means the radius is 4. So I need to go 4 from either side, and that will take me to the center. So the center for this circle is at -3, -2. That's my h and my k. And we also just said the radius was 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, when you're counting distance on a grid, you're counting the spaces, not the lines. So once I know the center and the radius, I can just plug in. X minus h is going to be +3 squared. Y minus k is going to be +2 squared equals r squared. So 4 squared is 16. Excuse the beeping of my projector. So there's my equation. Now, I mentioned there's another way to find the circle. Another way to find the circle, and you still have to pretty much determine some endpoints of a diameter. So let's go ahead and try it over here. It looks like this horizontal line is right in the middle, or we could use this vertical line that looks right in the middle. Either way, if I use either one of those, let's use the vertical line this time. If I find the 2 points that seem to be on the ends of a diameter, so this point is at -2, 2, and this point is at -2, -6. All right, then if you're looking at a diameter, what is right in the middle of a diameter? The center. So the center of a circle is the midpoint of a diameter. Remember midpoint formula? Midpoint formula looks like this. You add the x's together and divide by 2, add the y's together and divide by 2. It's kind of like taking the average of the x's and the average of the y's. So I can do that here. I can find the midpoint between these two endpoints, -2 plus -2 divided by 2, 2 plus -6 divided by 2, and this gives me -2, 2. No, it doesn't. It gives me -2, -2, and that's where my center is. So if you're having trouble finding the center, you can use the midpoint formula to help you do that. So here my center is at -2. Sorry for the beeping. It really is kind of annoying. And then I can count, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. My radius is 4. Remember, radius is the distance from the center to the edge of the circle. And you'll be happy to know that last beeping sound, trilling sound, means that it's done doing that for now. And here is my equation. I plugged in the -2 and the -2, r squared. And there we go. So I'm going to give you 2 more to try. Go ahead and try both of these. Hit pause if you need to, because I'm about to go on. All right, the center of this one, it looks to be right here. Okay, so that's at 2, 4. Center's at 2, 4. That's my H and K. And it looks like the radius is 1, 2 units. So my equation, running out of space here, sorry, is x minus 2 all squared plus y minus 4 all squared equals 2 squared gives me 4. Always be careful that when the radius is in the equation, it's actually the radius squared. Okay, if you take it out of the equation, then you unsquare it. You take the square root. So if I were to look at this equation and say, what's the radius? The radius is the square root of 16 because I'm coming out of the equation. It's only squared in the equation. Okay. Here's my center on this one. That is at the point 0, 2. My radius seems to be 1. From 2 to 3 is 1. From 2 to 1 is 1. Radius is just 1. So x minus 0 squared, you don't have to write all of this. You can just say, oh, that's just x squared. Plus y minus k squared equals 1 squared, which is just 1. Don't say that 1 times 1 is 2. 1 times 1 is still just 1. Hope this has helped. There will be another video coming with information on how to do some of these other problems we did not finish. Writing the equation if we have the center and some random point on the circle, or an endpoints of a diameter, or completing the square to take an equation that's not in standard form and put it in standard form. But I hope this has started you well on your circles equations journey, and that you'll see me next time, or I'll see you next time, or something like that. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.